We followed him into the annex and up one flight of stairs. He unlocked his door and we all trooped into what was a large, pleasant double bedroom. There was a woman's dressing gown lying across the bottom of one of the beds. "First," he said, "we have a little martini." The drinks were on a small table in the far corner, all ready to be mixed, and there was a shaker and ice and plenty of glasses. He began to make the martini, but meanwhile he'd rung the bell, and now there was a knock on the door, and a colored maid came in. "Ah," he said, putting down the bottle of gin, taking a wallet from his pocket and pulling out a pound note. "You will do something for me now, please?" He gave the maid the pound. "You keep that," he said. "And now we are going to play a little game in here, and I want you to go off and find for me 3 things. I want some nails, I want a hammer, I want a chopping knife, a butcher's chopping knife, which you can borrow from the kitchen. You can get, yes?" "A chopping knife?" The maid opened her eyes wide and clasped her hands in front of her. "You mean a real chopping knife?" Yes, of course. Come now, please. You can find those things surely for me." "Yes, sir, I'll try, sir. Surely I'll try to get them." And she went. The little man handed round the martinis. We stood there and sipped them. The boy with the long freckled face and the pointed nose, bare-bodied except for a pair of faded brown bathing shorts. The English girl, a large-boned, fair-haired girl wearing a pale blue bathing suit, who watched the boy over the top of her glass all the time, and the little man with the colorless eyes standing there in his immaculate white suit, drinking his martini and looking at the girl in a pale blue bathing dress. I didn't know what to make of it all. The man seemed serious about the bet, and he seemed serious about the business of cutting off the finger, but hell, what if the boy lost? Then we'd have to rush him to the hospital in the Cadillac that he hadn't won. That would be a fine thing. Now, wouldn't that be a really fine thing? It would be a damn silly, unnecessary thing, so far as I could see. "Don't you think this is rather a silly bet?" I said. "I think it's a fine bet," the boy answered. He had already downed one large martini. "I think it's a stupid, ridiculous bet," the girl said. "What'll happen if you lose?" "It won't matter, come to think of it. I can't remember ever in my life having had any use for my little finger on my left hand. Here he is." The boy took hold of the finger. "Here he is, and he hasn't ever done a thing for me yet. So why shouldn't I bet him? I think it's a fine bet." The little man smiled and picked up the shaker and refilled our glasses. "Before we begin," he said, "I will present to the referee the key of the car." He produced a car key from his pocket and gave it to me. "The papers," he said. "The owning papers and insurance are in the pocket of the car." Then the colored maid came in again. In one hand she carried a small chopper, the kind used by butchers for chopping meat bones, and in the other a hammer and a bag of nails. "Good, you get them all. Thank you. Now you can go." He waited until the maid had closed the door. Then he put his implements on one of the beds and said, "Now we prepare ourselves, yes?" And to the boy, "Help me, please, with this table. We carry it out a little." It was the usual kind of hotel writing desk, just a plain rectangular table, about 4 feet by 3, with a blotting pad, inks, pens, and paper. They carried it out into the room away from the wall and removed the writing things. "And now," he said, "a chair." He picked up a chair and placed it beside the table. It was very brisk and very animated, like a person organizing games at a children's party. "And now the nails. I must put in the nails." He fetched the nails and began to hammer them into the top of the table. We stood there, the boy, the girl, and I, holding martinis in our hands, watching the little man at work. We watched him hammer 2 nails into the table, about 6 inches apart. He didn't hammer them right home. He allowed a small part of each one to stick up. Then he tested them for firmness with his fingers. Anyone would think the son of a bitch had done this before. I told myself, he never hesitates. Tables, nails, hammer, kitchen chopper, he knows exactly what he needs and how to arrange it. "And now," he said, "all we want is some string." He found some string. "All right, at last we are ready. Will you please sit here at the table?" he said to the boy. The boy put his glass away and sat down. "Now place the left hand between these 2 nails." The nails are only so I can tie your hand in place. All right, good. Now I tie your hand secured to the table, just so. He wound the string around the boy's wrist, then several times around the wide part of the hand. Then he fastened it tight to the nails. He made a good job of it, and when he'd finished, there wasn't any question about the boy being able to draw his hand away. But he could move his fingers. Now please clench the fist, all except for the little finger. You must leave the little finger out lying on the table. Excellent, excellent. Now we are ready. With your right hand you manipulate the lighter, but one moment please. He skipped over to the bed and picked up the chopper. He came back and stood beside the table with the chopper in his hand. We are all ready, he said. Mr. Referee, you must say to begin. The English girl was standing there in a pale blue bathing costume, right behind the boy's chair. She was just standing there, but not saying anything. The boy was sitting quite still, holding the lighter in his right hand, looking at the chopper. The little man was looking at me. Are you ready? I asked the boy. I'm ready. And you? To the little man. Quite ready, he said, and he lifted the chopper up in the air and held it there about 2 feet above the boy's finger, ready to chop. The boy watched it, but he didn't flinch, and his mouth didn't move at all. He merely raised his eyebrows and frowned. All right, I said, go ahead. The boy said, will you please count aloud the number of times I light it? Yes, I said, I'll do that. With his thumb he raised the top of the lighter, and again with the thumb he gave the wheel a sharp flick. The flint sparked and the wick caught fire and burned with a small yellow flame. 1, I called. He didn't blow the flame out. He closed the top of the lighter on it, and he waited for perhaps 5 seconds before opening it again. He flicked the wheel very strongly, and once more there was a small flame burning on the wick. 2. No one else said anything. The boy kept his eyes on the lighter. The little man held the chopper up in the air, and he too was watching the lighter. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. Obviously it was one of those lighters that worked. The flint gave a big spark, and the wick was the right length. I watched the thumb snapping the top down onto the flame. Then a pause, then the thumb raising the top once more. This was an all-thumb operation. The thumb did everything. I took a breath, ready to say 8. The thumb flicked the wheel, the flint sparked, the little flame appeared. 8, I said, and as I said it, the door opened. We all turned and we saw a woman standing in the doorway, a small black-haired woman, rather old, who stood there for about 2 seconds, then rushed forward shouting, Carlos, Carlos! She grabbed his wrist, took the chopper from him, threw it on the bed, took hold of the little man by the lapels of his white suit, and began shaking him very vigorously, talking to him fast and loud and fiercely, all the time in some Spanish-sounding language. She shook him so fast you couldn't see him anymore. He became a faint, misty, quickly moving outline, like the spokes of a turning wheel. Then she slowed down, the little man came into view again, and she hauled him across the room and pushed him backwards onto one of the beds. He sat on the edge of it blinking, his eyes testing his head to see if it would still turn in his neck. I'm so sorry, the woman said. I am so terribly sorry that this should happen. She spoke almost perfect English. It's too bad, she went on. I suppose it is really my fault. For 10 minutes I leave him alone to go and have my hair washed. I come back and he is at it again. She looked sorry and deeply concerned. The boy was untying his hand from the table. The English girl and I stood there and said nothing. He is a menace, the woman said. Down where we live at home he has taken altogether 47 fingers from different people, and he has lost 11 cars. In the end they threatened to have him put away somewhere. That's why I brought him up here. We were only having a little bet, mumbled the little man from the bed. I suppose you would bet you a car, the woman said. Yes, the boy answered, a Cadillac. He has no car, it's mine. And that makes it worse, she said, that he should bet you when he has nothing to bet with. I am ashamed and very sorry about it all. She seemed an awfully nice woman. Well, I said, then here's the key of your... Well, I said, then here's the key of your car. I put it on the table. We were only having a little bet, mumbled the little man. He hasn't anything left to bet with, the woman said. He hasn't a thing in the world, not a thing. As a matter of fact, I myself won it all from him a long while ago. It took time, a lot of time, and it was hard work, but I won it all in the end. She looked up at the boy and smiled, a slow, sad smile, and she came over and put out a hand to take the key from the table. I can see it now, that hand of hers. It had only one finger on it, and a thumb.